If there is one thing that could end all human life on Earth, it would be a supervolcano eruption. But what exactly is a supervolcano? What makes it different from other volcanoes? And what would happen if one erupted today? Supervolcanoes are among the most violent forces of nature known to man. They are responsible for some of the largest and most devastating volcanic eruptions in history. While volcanoes can be found all over our planet, scientists have only identified a few spots with the potential to cause catastrophic damage on a global scale. So let's find out what they are and how they differ from regular volcanoes. First off, unlike your standard volcano, which can be found pretty much anywhere on Earth, supervolcanoes are rare. In fact, we only know of 3 so far. All of them are located in the United States. But don't worry, because none of them are active anymore. At least not for now. The 3 supervolcanoes in the US are Yellowstone, Long Valley, and Valles Caldera. Yellowstone National Park may be famous for its geysers and hot springs, but it also contains the largest supervolcano on the continent. Its magma chamber is nearly 45 by 25 miles wide, making up about half of the entire park. Although this magma chamber extends far beneath the surface of the Earth, occasionally it does manage to break through, causing one of the park's many geysers or hot springs. The Long Valley supervolcano is a bit different. It's actually made up of 2 smaller calderas, which are just fancy scientific words for collapsed volcanic craters. This megavolcano is about 35 by 25 miles across and is located in the Sierra Nevada mountain range. Finally, the smallest of the 3 is the Valles Caldera supervolcano. Measuring about 17 by 12 miles, this New Mexico caldera is home to the Valle Grande, which is Spanish for Great Valley. Although these 3 supervolcanoes are located in different parts of the country, they share a few common features. First off, each of their magma chambers is at least 25 miles wide, which makes them larger than any other volcano on the planet. Because of their size, these volcanoes do not produce the typical cone shape. Instead, they form large, roughly circular pits in the earth. Because these calderas are so massive, they pose a greater risk to the surrounding area than your average volcano. You see, when a volcano erupts, it doesn't just spew molten lava, it also releases gases and ash into the atmosphere. Small volcanoes release small amounts of these things. But supervolcanoes, well, they can unleash a combination of both in such large quantities that they can affect the entire planet. A supervolcanic eruption can inject thousands of cubic kilometers of material into the atmosphere. And when this material reaches a certain altitude, it can start to trap heat more effectively than normal. As a result, average temperatures around the world begin to rise. And while that might sound like a good thing, after all, we're in the middle of a global warming crisis. There's a big difference between a gradual increase in temperature over several decades and a sudden spike caused by volcanic activity. This is because during a supervolcanic eruption, massive amounts of gas and ash are released into the atmosphere almost instantaneously. This causes the trapped heat to rise rapidly and stay there for years. Normal volcanoes can't do this because they simply don't eject enough material into the upper atmosphere. A supervolcanic eruption is so intense that it can block out the sun for months, throwing the planet into darkness. We know this because scientists were able to study the effects of past super eruptions and compare them to modern-day weather patterns. The most famous supervolcanic eruption in history happened at the Yellowstone supervolcano about 640,000 years ago. It was called the Lava Creek eruption, and it sent an estimated 2,500 cubic kilometers of material into the air. To put that number into perspective, the largest recorded eruption in history was Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines. It released about 5 cubic kilometers of material into the atmosphere. That's 500 times less than the Lava Creek eruption. But why do these supervolcanoes erupt in the first place? Well, the answer depends on where you go. For example, the Yellowstone supervolcano is formed by a hotspot, which is basically a plume of hot rock rising from deep within the Earth's mantle. As this plume approaches the surface, it melts the rock above it, creating a magma chamber. When the pressure becomes too great, the magma breaks through the crust and erupts. Long Valley and Valles Caldera supervolcanoes, on the other hand, are formed by subduction zones. This is where an oceanic plate collides with the continental plate, and the denser oceanic plate bends and sinks beneath the other. As the oceanic plate descends into the mantle, it carries water with it. This water then mixes with the hot rock, creating magma that eventually makes its way to the surface. While these processes are different, the end result is always the same, a supervolcano. Now, you might be wondering why we haven't seen any signs of recent volcanic activity. After all, it's been more than 600,000 years since Yellowstone blew its top. Well, that's because supervolcanoes take a very long time to recharge. In fact, scientists estimate that it takes tens of thousands of years for these calderas to accumulate enough magma for another eruption. Take Yellowstone, for example. Between its most recent supereruption and its next largest eruption, there was a gap of 80,000 years. The next largest eruption after that had a gap of 13,000 years. Then there was a much smaller eruption with a gap of only 700 years. Finally, the last eruption occurred 70 years ago. It seems like Yellowstone is overdue for a major eruption, right? Well, maybe. Scientists currently disagree on whether or not Yellowstone is entering a new phase of heightened activity. Some believe that the recent earthquakes and steam vents are simply part of the park's normal cycle. Others think that we're in for a repeat of the Lava Creek eruption. Only time will tell which one of them is right. Now, you might be wondering what would happen if a supervolcano did erupt today. The short answer is, it would be bad. Really bad. First, anyone living near the volcano would be in grave danger. The hot lava and ash would destroy everything in its path, killing hundreds of thousands of people. As the eruption continued, ash would start falling over a much wider area. This ash would eventually make its way into the food supply, poisoning livestock and crops. Breathing in large amounts of volcanic ash can also cause serious health problems. But even if you lived far away from the volcano, you wouldn't be safe either. Remember how I talked about how the ash and gas can trap heat in the atmosphere? Well, this would cause a chain reaction. Hotter summers and cooler winters would become the norm for years. And although some parts of the world would experience brief periods of intense heat, most of the planet would enter what scientists call a volcanic winter. During this time, temperatures would be cooler than normal, but not cold enough to produce frost. The most dangerous aspect of this, however, would be the rain. You see, as the volcanic ash mixes with water vapor in the atmosphere, it forms clouds. These clouds would then release torrents of rain, causing widespread flooding. So not only would you have to deal with the scorching heat, but you'd also have to deal with record rainfall. Now, I know what you're thinking. If this has happened before, why aren't we prepared for it? Well, we are, sort of. Scientists are constantly monitoring the 3 supervolcanoes in the United States. If one of them shows signs of an impending eruption, the government has a plan in place to evacuate everyone nearby. However, there is one major flaw in this plan. You see, these supervolcanoes are all located in sparsely populated areas. Yellowstone, for example, is in the middle of a national park. The nearest city is about 50 miles away. Long Valley is surrounded by mountains and Valles Caldera is in a high desert. This means that evacuating these areas would be relatively easy. But what if a supervolcano erupted in a more densely populated area? For example, what if Mount Vesuvius erupted again? It's overdue for a major eruption, and if it happened today, it would be catastrophic. Cities like Naples and Salerno would be destroyed and millions of people would be killed. But that's a topic for another video. So rest assured, there is no supervolcanoes that are close to any major cities in the United States. If Yellowstone were to erupt, the worst we could hope for is a few extra inches of snow that winter. So for now, we can rest easy knowing that our chances of being burnt to death by a volcano are extremely low.